Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Podcasting Podcast. I'm Demetria, your host, and I offer podcasting advice, strategies, and support for heart-aligned entrepreneurs who want to share their message with purpose, make an impact, and grow their network. Welcome to the show, and you're listening to Soul Podcasting episode number 19. This podcast is sponsored once again by Faith Media and Impact Podcast Coach, which is a service that supports women podcasters to boldly share your voice, your message through podcasting. And you can find out more about it and any services that we offer there at impactpodcastcoach.com. Now, welcome back to another exciting episode of this show. And I'm your host, and today we're going to have an important topic to discuss. If you've been struggling to grow your podcast audience, then this episode is for you. We're going to be diving deep into the power of niching down and why it's crucial for podcast growth. So grab a notepad and a pen because you're about to receive some game-changing tips. Let's get started. So we're going to talk about what it means to niche down. And essentially, it's about narrowing your podcast's focus to target a specific audience or topic. A lot of podcasters fear that niching down is going to limit their potential audience, but in reality, the opposite is true. So when you narrow your focus, you become a specialist in a particular area, and you attract a dedicated community of listeners who are genuinely interested in what you have to say. Niching down is like finding your podcasting sweet spot. It allows you to establish your unique voice and carve out your own space in the podcasting landscape. Plus, by narrowing your focus, you make it easier for potential listeners to find you among the sea of podcasts that are out there. So let's dive into our first tip. Understanding your target audience. And before you can niche down, you really need to identify who your ideal listener is. So take some time to research and understand their interests, their pain points, and their desires. And this is also going to help you to tailor your content to their specific needs and make it much more compelling. We talked about finding those specific key topics that are going to help your audience in the last episode. So, of course, the first thing to do is to take time to get to know who your ideal listener is. Once you have a clear picture of your target audience, the next tip is to define your podcast's unique value proposition. So what makes your podcast stand out from all the rest of them? And there are plenty of podcasts out there. Identify that unique angle or perspective that you bring to the table. So yes, there's a ton of podcasts out there right now that are about podcasting, not as many, but they're starting to be more and more. And then with time, there will be probably quite a few. And so I had to figure out how to differentiate myself from the other podcasts that are about this same topic. And that was pretty easy for me because I have a very different angle on approaching the topic of podcasting. And I feel really comfortable in this space. So find out what is your comfort zone and how you want to show up on your podcast, whether that topic is about self-care or parenting, education, business, faith, or spirituality. Whatever you're bringing to the table, you have a different take on things. So even if there's another podcast that seems to be exactly aligned with what you're doing, you're going to bring a different slant, a different angle to it. So never be afraid to show up and own your own space the way that you show up. And my third tip is to focus on providing high quality content consistently. So when you niche down, you can delve deeper into your chosen topic. You can offer valuable insights, expertise, and even actionable advice. And by consistently delivering top-notch content that speaks directly to your target audience, you're going to build trust and loyalty, which are essential for long-term growth. This is why my Homeschool Moms podcast has been around for over 10 years. We're right at about 11 years now. And the reason it's still here and the reason it's still going strong is because I focus on my listener, who is my target audience. Why do I love bringing this content to them? How do I care for them so much? And I provide high quality content to them. So that means that I don't cut corners with this audience at all. If they need a particular topic from me, they want me to address something, I have taken user questions and I provided content based on their Q&As. And I will even address them directly on the podcast and give their name and make them feel that I'm talking directly to them. So it's very personable. But I also like to mix and match my media. So if I've provided something on my YouTube channel, I might even bring that content over to my podcast. And I just kind of do things that I feel like are relevant for that time and what their needs are. So I'm not just throwing a bunch of content out there just to get stuff out there, but really focusing on how can I help my listener. There's also a bit of adding extra elements like music. I like to add music right at the moments that they need to hear it. So if we're getting into sort of a devotional, and this is a homeschool podcast for Christian moms or moms of faith, so I might have some softer, peaceful music playing in the background as I'm sharing that segment of the show about scriptures. I have different bumpers that I might add depending on what segment we're getting into. So I try to spice it up a little bit and make it easier to listen to and cause it to flow. But again, it's all about whatever you feel easiest to do to provide that high quality content, whether it's in the actual advice you're giving or it's in the way that you're presenting it. You just want to be consistent no matter what you're doing. So when you niche down and be consistent, you're going to deliver that top-notch content that speaks directly to your audience, and you're going to build that trust and that loyalty. They're going to start trusting you. The more you show up, the more frequently and the more consistently you show up. I should say, maybe not frequently. It's probably not the best word to use because frequently can mean anything. For some people, frequently is twice a day, and that's just too much, in my opinion. But frequently can mean every week. It can mean once a month. It can mean once every 2 months. It's kind of spaced out, but in my opinion, and also from what statistics show for listeners that are looking for podcasts, they're looking for content to show up on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. And even if it's monthly, I'm finding a lot of success with that on my homeschool show. They just need to know that you're going to show up and that you're going to be consistent, not necessarily frequent. And that as you're showing up consistently, what you're doing is you're building their trust in you. Another tip to keep in mind is to engage with your audience actively. So building a community around your podcast is crucial for growth. You want to respond to listener questions, like I mentioned earlier with my Q&As. You want to listen to their comments and their feedback. Encourage audience participation through contests, through polls, or even guest features. This not only strengthens the bond with your existing listeners, but also attracts new ones who see the vibrant community that you've created. And finally, my last tip for you on this show today is to collaborate and start networking within your niche. You're going to identify other podcasters and experts or influencers who align with your niche and explore opportunities to collaborate with them. This could be through guest appearances on each other's podcasts. It could be joint episodes, or you can have cross promotions. One collab I had this year was that one of my guests who showed up on my show as a guest, I also showed up on her virtual summit. And so I provided content as one of her speakers at her summit, and she provided content as my guest on my podcast. I had another collab where I showed up as a guest in one of her VIP programs as a speaker and a contributor to her program. And she showed up on my podcast as a guest. And so we're helping each other out through cross promotions as well, doing joint episodes together as well. But by leveraging the power of networking, you're going to tap into new audiences and expand your reach significantly. So what do you think about that tip? Do you collaborate within your networks while you're creating your podcast? Or do you find it easier just to kind of put your content out there and sit back and relax? I don't know what works for you. To be honest, I do think that collaborating is a great way to expand your network, but it's also very affirming to you as a podcaster to not always feel that once you hit publish on your recorded episode for the week that your work is done, because it's really now about the celebration part of the process. And if you can get yourself out there to start collabing with others, you'll feel more sense of celebration as you start to bring others into your world and they bring you into theirs. And so I do highly recommend collabs for that reason. But if you're just not in the mood for collabing right now and you just want to get your content out there, I highly commend you for wanting to do this podcasting thing and to get your content out there for the world to consume and to enjoy. So before I wrap things up, let's summarize the tips that we discussed today. Number 1, understand your target audience. Number 2, define your podcast's unique value proposition. Number 3, focus on providing high quality content consistently. And number 4, engage actively with your audience. And finally, number 5, collaborate and network within your niche. And that's the end of our show today. Thank you so much for listening to episode 19. I'll be back next time with more content, tips, and advice for podcasters who want to podcast with soul. I appreciate your listenership, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your week and happy podcasting.